One whisper can dismantle an empire, or it can forge a dynasty from blood and ash. Standing in the center of the St. Regis Ballroom, surrounded by wolves in bespoke Italian suits, Vivian Moore realized she had 0 options left. The man watching her across the room wasn't just a CEO, he was the apex of the Sterling pack, a predator who famously discarded people like used tissues. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She walked straight into the fire, leaned into the dangerous heat radiating off him, and gambled her life on 5 words. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a war for survival. The champagne in Vivian's glass had gone warm 20 minutes ago, but she held on to it like a lifeline. The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan was suffocating, filled with the specific, metallic scent of ozone and pine, the scent of wolves pretending to be civilized humans. To the human press, waiting outside behind velvet ropes. This was the annual gala for Sterling Dynamics, a private security conglomerate. To everyone inside, it was a territorial display, and Vivian was trespassing. She adjusted the strap of her emerald silk dress, her knuckles white. She shouldn't be here. If Grant Calloway found her, if the scent of her fear drifted past the heavy perfume of the socialites nearby, she wouldn't make it to the exit. Grant was the alpha of the Northern Tier, a man who viewed no as a challenge and leaving as treason. But the man she needed was standing by the fireplace, nursing a tumbler of amber liquid. Declan Sterling. He was taller than the photos in Forbes suggested. In person, the stillness of him was terrifying. He didn't fidget. He didn't scan the room. He stood with the lethargic confidence of a creature that knew nothing in the room could kill him. He wore a tuxedo that cost more than Vivian's entire college tuition. His dark hair swept back, revealing a face composed of sharp angles and brutal indifference. Vivian took a breath. Do it. Before Grant walks through those doors. She began to move. The crowd parted. In the wolf world, hierarchy was physical. You felt an alpha's gravity before you touched them. As she entered Declan's radius, the air grew heavy, static charged. Declan's eyes shifted. They were grey, the colour of a winter ocean, and they locked onto her with 0 warmth. He didn't know her. To him, she was just another omega or low-ranking beta trying to climb the social ladder. He turned away, dismissing her before she even spoke. Vivian stepped into his personal space, breaching protocol. A low growl rumbled in the chest of his bodyguard, a massive man named Cale. But Declan held up a hand. "You're in my light," Declan said. His voice was a deep baritone, bored and smooth. "Grant Calloway is 5 minutes away," Vivian said, her voice trembling slightly. "He's coming for me, and if he takes me, he gets the encryption keys to the Anderson accounts." Declan paused. The glass halfway to his mouth stopped. The Anderson accounts weren't public knowledge. They were the slush fund used by the East Coast PACs to bribe senators. "Who are you?" Declan asked, finally looking at her, really looking at her. "I'm the mistake he made," Vivian whispered. "I'm the one who did the forensic accounting. And you want what money A plane ticket. I want to live." The heavy oak doors at the far end of the ballroom slammed open. The chatter died instantly. Grant Calloway strode in, flanked by 3 enforcers. He looked manic, his eyes scanning the crowd, hunting. He smelled her. Vivian saw his head snap in her direction. Panic flared in her chest, hot and acidic. Grant started moving toward her, shoving a waiter aside. Vivian looked up at Declan. The indifference was gone, replaced by calculation. He was weighing her value against the cost of a war with the Northern Tier. He's going to kill me right here, she said, her voice breaking. Unless I belong to someone higher. Declan looked at Grant, then back down at Vivian. You want me to claim you? That's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Darling, just pretend, she begged, her hand instinctively grabbing the lapel of his jacket. The contact sent a shockwave through her, a biological recognition she hadn't expected. Mate. She saw Declan's pupils dilate. He felt it too, the biological click, the latching of souls. He stiffened, fighting it. He was a man of logic, not instinct. Grant was 10 feet away. Vivian! He roared, his voice shifting into a partial growl. Just pretend you love me, she whispered, rising on her tiptoes, her eyes pleading. Declan looked at Grant, then down at the woman whose scent, vanilla and terrified rain, was suddenly flooding his senses. A cruel smirk touched his lips. Pretend, Declan murmured. He dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor, before the sound of breaking glass faded. Declan's hand shot out, wrapping around Vivian's waist, pulling her flush against his hard chest. He didn't just hold her, he claimed the space she occupied. Grant stopped dead, his chest heaving. Step away from her. Sterling, that's my property. Declan looked bored again. He reached up, his large hand cupping Vivian's jaw, his thumb brushing her lower lip. Your property? Declan asked, loud enough for the nearby circle to hear. Funny. I was under the impression that Vivian has been my fiancée for the last 3 months. The room gasped. Vivian froze. Fiancée. Forever, Declan whispered against her ear. A command rather than a question. Then he kissed her. It wasn't a stage kiss. It was an annihilation. He devoured her, his tongue sweeping into her mouth, tasting the champagne and the fear. It was possessive, angry, and overwhelmingly real. The bond snapped into place like a steel trap. When he pulled back, Vivian was breathless, her lips swollen. Declan looked at Grant, his grey eyes flashing gold, the sign of the wolf rising. Get out of my sight, Calloway, before I mount your head on my boardroom wall. The ride to Declan's penthouse was silent. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. They were in the back of a Maybach, shielded by tinted glass and rain-slicked streets. Vivian sat as far to the door as possible, hugging her arms. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her shaking. Declan was on his phone, typing furiously. He hadn't looked at her since they left the hotel. Kyle, Declan said to the driver, not looking up. Call legal. I need an NDA and a cohabitation agreement drafted. Level 5 clearance. Have it waiting when we get to the tower. Yes, Alpha. Vivian swallowed. Cohabitation. Declan finally turned his head. The warmth from the kiss was gone. He looked like a statue again. You started a war tonight. Vivian, do you think I can send you to a Motel 6? I didn't ask for a war. I asked for help. You asked me to pretend, he corrected, his voice sharp. I don't pretend. I strategize. Calloway backed down because I outrank him. But the moment he thinks this engagement is fake, he will come for you, and he will come for my business assets as collateral for the insult. So, we are getting married. Married, Vivian choked out. We just met. We met, Declan said, locking eyes with her, and the bond flared. Don't insult my intelligence by denying it. I felt it. You felt it. That's just biology. It's pheromones. It's leverage, Declan countered. The board has been pressuring me to take a mate to secure the lineage. You need protection. I need the board off my back, so I can focus on the acquisition of the Red River territory. It's a transaction. The car pulled into the underground garage of the Sterling Tower. It was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking Central Park. They took the private elevator to the 91st floor. The doors opened directly into a living room that cost more than most countries' GDP. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art, and zero personal touches. It was a museum, not a home. A frantic-looking lawyer was already there, arranging papers on a glass coffee table. "Sign," Declan said, loosening his tie and throwing it onto a chair. He walked to the bar and poured a drink. Vivian picked up the documents. The undersigned Vivian Moore agrees to maintain the public image of a devoted partner. No speaking to the press. Forfeiture of all rights to Sterling assets upon dissolution. Clause 4, Vivian said, her voice steadying. Her accounting brain was taking over. Panic was useless. Numbers made sense. It says I have no access to personal communication devices without supervision. Calloway can track your phone, Declan said, taking a sip of whiskey. I'm buying you a new one, encrypted. Clause 10, she continued. Duration of the agreement until the Red River acquisition closes and Calloway is neutralized. 6 months, maybe a year, and then we divorce. You get $5 million and a new identity in Europe. Vivian looked at him. He was standing by the window, the city lights reflecting in the glass. He looked lonely, powerful, yes, but incredibly isolated. And the bond, she asked softly. What do we do about that? Declan turned. He walked toward her, stopping only inches away. He smelled of rain and expensive scotch. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We ignore it, Vivian. We starve it until it dies. Because I don't do love. And you. He looked at the bruise forming on her arm where Grant had grabbed her weeks ago. You are too damaged to be the Luna of this pack. The word stung, sharper than a slap. Vivian felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She took the pen. Fine, she said. Strictly business. She signed her name, Vivian Moore. Declan took the paper, checked the signature, and handed it to the lawyer. Get out. The lawyer scrambled into the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, the atmosphere shifted. They were alone. The air in the room seemed to thin. There is one more thing, Declan said. What? The bedroom situation. He gestured down the hall. My staff expects us to be inseparable. You're sleeping in my room. I'll take the couch. You'll take the left side of the king bed, Declan said. Unbuttoning his shirt, he didn't seem to care that she was watching. His chest was muscular, scarred from old battles, covered in a light dusting of hair. If the housekeeping staff smells only me on the sheets, they talk. If they talk, Calloway finds out. He tossed his shirt aside and looked at her, his eyes traveling down her silk dress. Do you have anything else to wear? I ran away with a backpack. I left it at the coat check. Declan sighed, a sound of profound irritation. He walked into his massive walk-in closet and returned with a black t-shirt. He threw it at her. Put that on. The bathroom is to the right. Vivian went into the bathroom. It was all marble and cold stone. She changed into his shirt. It smelled like him cedar and musk. It hit her senses like a drug. Her wolf, the inner spirit she usually kept suppressed, purred. Mate. Safe. Mine. Shut up, she told herself. He thinks you're damaged goods. She walked back out. Declan was already in bed, lying on his back, reading a tablet. He was shirtless, the sheet pulled up to his waist. Vivian hesitated, then crawled onto the left side of the bed, staying as close to the edge as possible. The mattress was firm, the sheets high-thread count cotton. "Lights," Declan commanded. The room plunged into darkness. Vivian lay there, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could hear his breathing. Slow. Steady. 10 minutes passed. "Stop thinking so loud," Declan's voice cut through the dark. "I can't help it. You're safe here. Vivian, I'm an arsehole, but I'm the most powerful arsehole in the city. Calloway can't touch you." "Why did you really agree?" she asked into the darkness. "It's not just the board." Silence stretched. She thought he had fallen asleep. "Because," Declan finally said, his voice rougher now, stripped of the corporate polish. "When you walked up to me, you were the first person in 10 years who looked at me and didn't see a bank account. You saw a shield. It was refreshing." Vivian turned her head. She could just make out his profile in the ambient city light. "Good night, Declan." "Good night, Vivian." She closed her eyes, but just as she drifted off, she felt a heavy arm drape over her waist, pulling her backward until her back was pressed against his warm chest. She stiffened. "Don't," he mumbled, sleep heavy in his voice. "Instinct. Just stay." Vivian relaxed, letting his heat seep into her frozen bones, for the first time in 3 years. She didn't have nightmares. The morning sun hitting the penthouse windows was brutal, but not as brutal as the team of stylists waiting in the living room. Vivian woke up alone in the king-sized bed. The sheets on Declan's side were cold. For a moment, she wondered if the arm around her waist the night before had been a hallucination, a phantom limb of her own loneliness. When she walked out into the living area, wearing nothing but Declan's oversized t-shirt, conversation stopped. Declan was there, fully dressed in a charcoal suit, reading a dossier on a tablet. Standing around him were 3 women and a man, all immaculately groomed, holding garment bags and makeup cases. "She's awake," Declan said without looking up. "Fix her." One of the stylists, a woman with sharp features and hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, stepped forward. She sniffed the air near Vivian. "She smells like fear and drugstore shampoo. We have work to do before the equinox ball tonight." "The what?" Vivian asked, clutching the hem of the shirt. Declan finally looked at her. His expression was unreadable, the vulnerability of the bedroom gone. "The equinox ball. It's the quarterly gathering of the East Coast Alphas. It's where we announce the engagement. If you fail tonight, the contract is void." "Fail?" Vivian bristled. "I survived Grant Calloway for 2 years. I think I can handle a cocktail party." "This isn't a cocktail party." "Vivian," Declan said, standing up. He loomed over her, his presence sucking the oxygen out of the room. "It's a pit, and they will smell the weakness on you. Specifically, Vanessa will smell it." "Who is Vanessa?" "The woman the board wanted me to marry," Declan said. "She's the daughter of the Southern Alpha. She thinks the position of Sterling Luna is her birthright. She will try to break you. Don't let her." He checked his watch. "I have meetings. Kyle stays with you. Don't leave the building." He walked out without a goodbye. The door clicked shut, and Vivian felt the cold space he left behind. The Equinox Ball was held at a private estate in the Hamptons. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life, and the air smelled of salt water and expensive perfume. Vivian wore a dress of liquid silver that clung to every curve, chosen by the ruthless styling team. Her hair was swept up, exposing the long line of her neck, a vulnerable spot for a wolf. but a display of confidence for a Luna. As she walked in on Declan's arm, the hush was immediate. Hundreds of eyes turned. She felt the weight of their judgment. They were assessing her. Was she strong? Was she worthy? Was she breeding material? Breathe, Declan murmured, his hand warm on the small of her back. Head up. You own this room. I feel like I'm walking the plank, she whispered back. You're walking the red carpet. There's a difference. They circulated. Vivian played the part. She smiled. She nodded. She laughed at jokes she didn't understand. She used the techniques she learned in accounting, observing details, reading body language. She noticed which wolves bowed their heads to Declan subordinates and which ones held eye contact rivals. Then the crowd parted like the Red Sea. A woman approached. She was stunning tall, with hair the color of spilled wine and eyes that burned with predatory intelligence. She wore red, a violent clash against Vivian's silver. Vanessa. Declan. Vanessa purred, ignoring Vivian completely. She placed a hand on Declan's bicep, her fingers lingering. We missed you at the hunt last week. Father was disappointed. I was busy acquiring territory. Vanessa. You know how it is. Declan didn't shake her off, but he didn't lean into her touch either. Vanessa's eyes finally flicked to Vivian. It was a look of pure, distilled malice. And this must be the accountant I heard you picked up a stray. Declan. Very charitable of you. The circle of onlookers tightened. This was the test. Vivian felt her pulse spike. Stray. It was a slur in the wolf world. Declan's jaw tightened, ready to intervene. But Vivian stepped forward. She remembered the Anderson accounts. She remembered the discrepancies she found in the Southern Pack's logistics ledgers when she was working for Grant. It's lovely to meet you, Vanessa, Vivian said, her voice steady, though her knees were shaking. Declan speaks of you often, mostly about your father's unique approach to logistics. Vanessa's smile faltered. Excuse me. Vivian smiled, sweet and sharp. The shell companies in the Cayman's Blue Wave Logistics, I recall seeing some very interesting tax filings regarding those shipping containers that never seemed to arrive. The color drained from Vanessa's face. The Southern Alpha was skimming off the top of the council dues. Everyone suspected it, but no one had proof. Vivian had just implied she knew where the bodies were buried. That's absurd, Vanessa stammered. Is it? Vivian tilted her head. I love numbers. Vanessa, they never lie. People do. But numbers don't. Declan let out a low, dark chuckle. It was a terrifying sound. He wrapped his arm tighter around Vivian. She has a knack for details. Vanessa, I'd be careful. My fiancé sees everything. Vanessa stepped back, defeated. The crowd murmured. Vivian hadn't just survived. She had drawn blood. Later, on the balcony overlooking the ocean, Declan handed Vivian a glass of water. You're dangerous, he said, looking at her with a new expression. It wasn't just lust anymore. It was respect. I hate bullies, Vivian said, leaning against the railing. Vanessa reminds me of Grant. You did well. Declan moved closer. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of his face. The bond hummed between them, louder now, fueled by the adrenaline of the confrontation. You defended the pack. That's what a Luna does. I was defending myself. Same thing now, Declan said. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. You're mine. Vivian, on paper, and in front of them. And in private, she asked, her breath hitching. Declan didn't answer with words. He pulled her into him, burying his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent deeply. His teeth grazed the sensitive skin over her pulse point, a claiming gesture so intimate it made her knees buckle. In private, he growled against her skin. "You are becoming a problem I don't want to solve." For a week, things were perfect. They were a team. They worked in his office side by side, Vivian organizing his chaotic personal investments while he ran the empire. They ate dinner together. They slept in the same bed, the distance between them shrinking every night until they were waking up tangled in each other's limbs. Vivian started to believe the lie. She started to believe that the forever he whispered that first night could be real. But happiness in the world of wolves is fragile, especially when built on secrets. The fall happened on a Tuesday. Vivian was in the penthouse library, organizing Declan's old files. She felt safe. Grant hadn't made a move in weeks. The NDA was holding. She found a burner phone taped under the drawer of an old desk. It buzzed. Curiosity is a fatal flaw. Vivian picked it up. It was a text message. "Sender unknown message. The transfer is complete. Calloway has the encryption keys. Your debt is paid. Get out before Sterling kills you." Vivian stared at the screen, her blood turning to ice. What, she hadn't sent anything? She hadn't spoken to anyone before she could process it. The library door opened. Declan walked in. He looked tired, his tie undone, carrying 2 takeout boxes of Thai food, her favorite. "I thought we could—" He stopped. He saw the phone in her hand. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "Where did you get that?" Declan asked, his voice deadly quiet. "I found it," Vivian stammered. "It was under the desk. It just buzzed." Declan crossed the room in 2 strides. He snatched the phone from her hand and read the screen. His face went blank. The light died in his eyes, replaced by the steel walls she had seen the first night at the hotel. "Declan. I don't know who sent that. I didn't. The encryption keys for the Anderson accounts were accessed this morning," Declan said, his voice void of emotion. "I just got the alert from IT. I thought it was a glitch. I came home to check on you." He looked at her, and the look broke her heart. It was betrayal. Deep, agonizing betrayal. "You played me," he whispered. The scared Omega act, the trembling. It was all to get close enough to steal the data for Calloway. "No," Vivian grabbed his arm. "Declan, look at me. I would never help him. He abused me. He hunted me." Or maybe that was a performance, too. Declan snarled, shaking her off. "Maybe you and Calloway are laughing about how easy it was to seduce the alpha of the Sterling pack." "Check the phone," she cried. "Check the fingerprints. Check the location data." Calloway is a ghost. Vivian, he knows how to plant things. But the data is gone. And you are the only other person who knew the codes. "I didn't do it. Get out," Declan said. He turned his back to her. "Declan, please. Get out." The roar shook the glass in the window frames. His wolf was surfacing, violent and hurt. "Get out before I forget that I don't kill women." Vivian backed away, tears streaming down her face. She realized then that the bond wasn't enough. Trust was the currency, and hers had just been counterfeited. She ran. She grabbed her backpack, the same one she came with, and ran for the elevator. Kyle was in the lobby, looking confused as she sprinted past him, sobbing. "Vivian," Kyle called out. She didn't stop. She hit the street and vanished into the rainy New York night. Back in the penthouse, Declan stood by the window, watching the rain. The burner phone was crushed in his hand, plastic and glass biting into his skin. His wolf was howling in his head. "Mate. Mate. Mate. Wrong. Wrong. Shut up," Declan hissed at his own reflection. She's a liar. But deep down, in the place where the bond lived, he felt a sick, twisting sensation. He looked at the shattered phone again. He smelled it, under the scent of plastic and old dust. There was a faint, lingering scent. Not Vivian's vanilla, not Calloway's pine. It smelled like red, like expensive, cloying perfume. Vanessa. Declan froze. He realized with a jolt of horror that he hadn't just made a mistake. He had made a catastrophic error. Vanessa had planted the phone during the party, or paid a maid to do it. It was a setup to frame Vivian and drive her out. And he had just sent Vivian unprotected, unmarked, and alone straight into the city where Grant Calloway was waiting. Vivian had no money. Her credit cards were linked to the Sterling account, which she couldn't use. She walked for hours, sticking to the crowds, her head down. She ended up in a 24-hour diner in Queens, nursing a cup of coffee she paid for with loose change found in her jacket pocket. She felt hollow. The bond with Declan felt like a severed nerve, a constant, throbbing pain in her chest. She watched the door, every time it opened. She flinched. It was 3 a.m. when the black SUV pulled up to the curb. Vivian knew that car. She slid out of the booth, heading for the back exit through the kitchen. She pushed past a confused cook and burst into the alleyway. It was a dead end. Standing at the mouth of the alley was Grant Calloway. He looked better than the last time she saw him. Smug, triumphant. "Hello, darling." Grant smiled. The expression didn't reach his eyes. Trouble in paradise. "Stay back," Vivian warned, backing up until she hit the brick wall. "Declan will come for me." Grant laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. "Declan kicked you out. My sources tell me the engagement is off. You're rogue now. Vivian, you have no pack, no protection, and you still have my codes inside that pretty little head of yours." Two enforcers stepped out from behind him. One held a syringe. "We're going to go for a ride," Grant said, "and you're going to rewrite those accounts for me. And when you're done, well, I've always wanted a rug by the fireplace." Vivian screamed as the enforcer lunged. She fought, scratching and biting, but she was an accountant, not a soldier. The needle pierced her neck. The world went grey, then black. The last thing she thought of was Declan's grey eyes. Declan tore through the city. He wasn't driving the Maybach. He was on a motorcycle, weaving through traffic at 120 miles per hour. He had tracked Vivian's scent to the diner, but the trail went cold in the alley. He found her backpack in a dumpster. He knelt in the rain, pulling out the bag. It smelled of her terror, and it smelled of Grant Calloway. Declan let out a roar that stopped pedestrians on the street in their tracks. It wasn't human. It was pure alpha rage. He pulled out his phone. "Cale," he barked. "Initiate Protocol 0. Wake everyone up. The city guard, the private contractors, the mercenaries. I want every wolf in New York hunting." "Target?" Kyle asked. "Calloway. He has her. If she has a single scratch on her, I am burning the northern tier to the ground." "Declan?" Kyle's voice was serious. "Starting a war with the North without council approval. You'll lose the company. You'll be stripped of your alpha status." Declan looked at the empty alleyway. He imagined Vivian alone, scared, thinking he hated her. "I don't care about the company," Declan said, his voice breaking. "She's my mate." He hung up. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, pulling on the bond he had tried so hard to ignore. Vivian. It was faint. A weak pulse of life. Miles away. She was unconscious, but she was alive. He focused. He could feel the direction. North, towards the industrial docks. Declan's eyes flashed gold. He shifted, his clothes shredding as bones cracked and reformed. A massive black wolf, larger than any natural animal, stood in the alley. He didn't need a motorcycle anymore. He needed blood. The warehouse was a rusty cathedral of iron and darkness. Vivian woke up zip-tied to a chair. Her head was pounding from the sedative. Grant was sitting on a crate in front of her, sharpening a knife. "Ah, Sleeping Beauty wakes up," Grant said. "Ready to work. Go to hell." Vivian spat. Grant sighed. He stood up and walked over, placing the cold blade of the knife against her cheek. "You know, I really did like you, Vivian. You were efficient, quiet, but you embarrassed me. Running to Sterling. That was an insult." He pressed the knife harder. A drop of blood trickled down her skin. "Type the codes," he commanded, pointing to a laptop on a nearby table. "Transfer the funds to my offshore account." "No." Grant raised his hand to strike her. Suddenly, the metal roof of the warehouse groaned. Boom! A skylight shattered. Glass rained down like diamonds. A black shadow dropped from the ceiling, landing in a crouch 30 feet below. It was a wolf, a monster of shadow and muscle, with eyes like burning molten gold. Grant's enforcers scrambled for their guns, but they were too slow. The black wolf moved like a blur. It tore through the first enforcer, tossing him across the room like a rag doll. The second enforcer fired, but the wolf didn't even flinch. It simply absorbed the impact and snapped the man's arm. Grant stumbled back, pale with terror. "Sterling," he screamed. "She's mine by law of—" The wolf didn't care about laws. He shifted mid-leap, human form emerging from the fur. Declan landed in front of Vivian, naked, covered in blood that wasn't his, looking like the god of vengeance. He didn't look at Grant. He looked at Vivian. He saw the cut on her cheek. The sound that came out of Declan was so guttural, so filled with raw pain and fury, that the windows rattled. He turned to Grant. "You touched her," Declan said. His voice was a distorted, dual-tone growl man, and wolf speaking at once. Grant held up the knife. "Stay back, I'll kill her." "You're already dead," Declan said. "You just haven't stopped breathing yet." Declan walked forward. Grant lunged with the knife. Declan caught his wrist, twisted it until the bone snapped with a wet crunch, and slammed Grant into the concrete floor. He straddled him, his hands wrapping around Grant's throat. "Declan!" Vivian screamed. Don't become him." Declan froze. His claws were inches from ripping Grant's throat out. He was panting, the beast fighting for control. "He's not worth it," Vivian cried, struggling against her ties. "Declan, look at me. I'm okay. Just take me home." Declan looked back at her. The gold in his eyes faded slowly back to storm grey. He looked down at the gasping, broken man beneath him. He released Grant's throat and stood up. He spat on the ground next to Grant's head. "If you ever come within 1,000 miles of her," Declan said, his voice returning to its icy calm, "I won't stop next time, and neither will she." He walked over to Vivian. He didn't bother untying the knots. He snapped the zip ties with his bare hands. He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, heedless of the blood and dirt. He was shaking. "I'm sorry." He buried his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry. I knew it was a setup. I was too late." "You came," Vivian sobbed, holding on to him. "You came for me." "Always," Declan whispered. "Forever." Recovery wasn't a montage of soft music and fading bruises. It was ugly, slow, and quiet. For 3 days, the penthouse was a fortress. The blinds were drawn. The staff was dismissed, except for Kyle, who stood guard by the elevator like a stone gargoyle. Vivian spent the first day in bed, drifting in and out of sleep, her body metabolizing the trauma. Declan didn't leave the room. He set up a temporary command center on the vanity table laptops, satellite phones, and encrypted drives. He ran a multi-billion-dollar empire while watching her chest rise and fall in the mirror reflection. When she woke up on the second night, the room was dark, lit only by the blue glow of his screens. "You're staring," she croaked, her throat dry. Declan turned instantly. He abandoned the merger documents for the Red River acquisition and was at her bedside in seconds. He poured a glass of water, holding the straw to her lips. "I'm memorizing," he corrected gently. "Making sure you're still here." Vivian drank, the cool water soothing the scratchiness in her throat. She looked at him. The arrogant, pristine CEO was gone. In his place was a man with stubble, dark circles under his eyes, wearing wrinkled sweatpants. "Vanessa," Vivian said. It wasn't a question. Declan's face hardened, the tenderness evaporating into cold rage. "We found the maid she bribed. We have the bank transfer records. She paid $10,000 to plant the phone and another $50 to have the security logs wiped. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to destroy her," Declan said simply. "I've already frozen the Southern Pac's assets. I'm calling a council tribunal tomorrow. She'll be stripped of her rank and exiled." "No," Vivian said. Sitting up, she winced as her ribs protested. Declan put a hand on her shoulder to steady her. "No. She tried to get you killed. Vivian, she framed you. And if you drag her before a tribunal, it becomes a scandal. The stock drops. The Red River deal falls apart because investors get scared of wolf politics. You lose money. She wins by dragging you down with her." Declan looked at her, surprised. "You're thinking about the stock price. I'm an accountant. Declan, I solve problems. I don't create new ones." She swung her legs over the edge of the bed. "Don't exile her. Humiliate her. Use the system she tried to manipulate." "How?" Vivian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who knew where the tax loopholes were. "Bring me my laptop." The council meeting was held in the boardroom of Sterling Tower. It was a massive table of mahogany, seated with the 12 most powerful alphas of the East Coast. Vanessa was there, sitting next to her father, the Southern Alpha. She looked smug. She thought she had won. She thought Vivian was gone, a piece of trash taken out to the curb. When the doors opened, and Declan walked in, the room went silent. He looked impeccable again, shaved, tailored suit, power radiating off him in waves. "Declan," Vanessa's father boomed. "We heard about the unpleasantness with your little human pet. A shame. Hard to find good help." "She wasn't help," Declan said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "And she isn't gone." He pressed a button on the intercom. "Send her in." The side door opened. Vivian walked in. She wasn't wearing a hospital gown. She was wearing a white power suit that cost more than Vanessa's car. Her hair was sleek, her makeup covering the fading bruise on her cheek. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like the CEO. Vanessa's jaw dropped. She's a traitor." She stole the encryption keys. "Actually," Vivian said, her voice projecting clearly across the room without a microphone. She placed a stack of documents on the table. "I've been doing an audit of the Council's discretionary fund, specifically the contributions made by the Southern Pac." She slid the folders down the table. The alphas opened them. "You see," Vivian continued, walking around the table, pacing like a shark. "Vanessa didn't just frame me. She's been embezzling from all of you for 3 years to fund her lifestyle in Paris and Milan. She used the security upgrades budget. The room erupted. "What is this?" One Alpha roared. "Page 4, Vivian directed. "You'll see the wire transfers. They match the timestamp of the burner phone purchase she made to frame me. She used the council's own credit card to buy the phone that nearly got me killed." It was the ultimate forensic slam dunk. Not only was she a thief, but she was also stupid enough to leave a paper trail. Vanessa stood up, her face purple. "You lying little—" "Sit down," Declan roared. The command slammed into Vanessa, forcing her back into her chair. "The evidence is irrefutable," Declan said calmly. "The Sterling Pack moves to dissolve the Southern Alliance, and we demand restitution. We will be seizing the Southern Territories as payment for the theft." The other Alphas, furious at being stolen from, nodded in agreement. "Agreed. Agreed. Take it all." Vanessa's father looked at his daughter with disgust. He had lost his territory because his daughter wanted to play mean girl games with a forensic accountant. As security escorted a screaming Vanessa out of the building, Vivian stood by Declan's chair. He reached out, taking her hand in front of everyone. He kissed her knuckles. "That," Declan whispered to her, "was the hottest thing I've ever seen." The first snow of December didn't fall gently. It hit New York sideways, driven by a biting wind that rattled the window panes of the Sterling Tower. 6 months had passed since the warehouse. 6 months since the blood, the fear, and the public dismantling of the Southern Alliance. To the outside world, Vivian Moore was a Cinderella story, the accountant who captured the heart of the East Coast's most elusive bachelor. The tabloids ran grainy photos of them walking out of charity galas or entering the tower, analyzing her wardrobe choices for signs of a baby bump or a breakup. But the reality inside the penthouse was far quieter and far more complex. Vivian sat at the massive mahogany desk in the library, the glow of her dual monitors illuminating her face. She wasn't organizing Declan's personal receipts anymore. She was reviewing the architectural blueprints for The Sanctuary, a non-profit initiative she had bullied the board into funding. It was a safe house system for Omegas and humans caught in pack crossfire people like she had been. She rubbed her temples, staring at a budget shortfall in the construction logistics. "You're frowning," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. "It's giving you wrinkles." Vivian didn't look up. "I'm not frowning. I'm concentrating. The contractor in Jersey is trying to overcharge us for the reinforced steel glass. He thinks because I'm a human Luna, I won't know the market price of industrial materials." Declan walked into the room. He had just come from a run. His hair was damp, and he smelled of cold air, rain, and that unique, earthy scent of pine that was just him. He was wearing a loose grey t-shirt and sweatpants, a stark contrast to the armoured suits he wore during the day. He came up behind her chair, his hands resting on her shoulders. He didn't massage them, he just held her, grounding her. The heat from his body seeped into hers, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. "Fire him," Declan said casually, leaning down to press a kiss to the top of her head. "Use the Sterling logistics team. We have warehouses full of steel we aren't using." "That's nepotism," Vivian murmured, leaning back into his touch. "That's efficiency," he countered. "And since you own half my shares now, technically you're stealing from yourself if you pay retail." Vivian swiveled the chair around. She looked at him, really looked at him. The shadows under his eyes had faded. The perpetual tension in his jaw, the look of a wolf, constantly waiting for a fight, had softened. "We need to talk," she said. Declan went still. His hands tightened slightly on the armrests of her chair. Even after 6 months of peace, the trauma response was there. "We need to talk," usually meant I'm leaving. About what? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. Vivian stood up and walked over to the small safe concealed behind a row of faux vintage encyclopedias. She spun the dial a combination she had memorized and pulled out a single, slightly crinkled manila envelope. She walked back and placed it on the desk between them. Declan stared at it. He knew what it was. The Cohabitation and Non-Disclosure Agreement. Vivian read the title aloud. Dated 6 months ago. Vivian, Declan started, a warning growl low in his throat. That's invalid. You know that. Is it? She tapped the paper. Clause 14 states that the agreement is binding until formal dissolution is filed with the PAC legal counsel. We never filed it. Technically, I'm still your employee, Declan. Technically, I'm contractually obligated to share your bed to maintain appearances. Declan looked as if she had slapped him. He walked around the desk, picked up the envelope, and without breaking eye contact, he tore it in half. Then he tore the halves into quarters. He walked over to the fireplace, where a low fire was crackling, and tossed the confetti of legal jargon into the flames. He watched the paper curl and blacken, turning into ash. There, he said, turning back to her. You're fired. Vivian let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the night at the Pierre Hotel. Good. I hated the benefits package anyway. Declan didn't smile. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping inches from her. The playfulness was gone. The air in the library grew heavy, charged with the static electricity of his wolf rising. Why did you bring that up? He asked softly. Because, Vivian said, her voice trembling slightly. Because we skipped the middle part. Declan, we went from strangers to fake fiancés to trauma survivors. We skipped the dates. We skipped the awkward phone calls. We skipped the part where we choose each other without a gun to our heads. She looked down at her hands. I don't want to be with you because I'm grateful you saved me. And I don't want you to be with me because your wolf decided I smell good. I want real life. Declan was silent for a long time. He reached out, taking her hand. His thumb traced the scars on her knuckles, remnants of the night in the warehouse. You think this is just gratitude? He asked hoarsely. I don't know, she whispered. Is it? Declan pulled her toward the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked Central Park. The snow was falling harder now, blurring the city lights into a watercolor painting of gold and white. Do you remember the first night? Declan asked, looking out at the city he ruled. When you told me to pretend, vividly. I wasn't pretending, he admitted. Not entirely. When you walked up to me, I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who was terrified, shaking apart, and yet she still had the audacity to try and hustle an Alpha Prime. It was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. He turned to face her, his grey eyes searching hers. I don't love you because of the bond. Vivian, the bond is just biology. It's noise. I love you because you argue with me about steel prices at midnight. I love you because you forgave me for the worst mistake of my life when I didn't deserve it. I love you because you are the only person in this entire city who looks at Declan Sterling and just sees a man. He reached into the pocket of his sweatpants. Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs. Declan, I didn't buy a ring from Cartier, he said, his voice shaking, actually shaking, because you just look up the resale value and lecture me on depreciation. Vivian let out a wet, choked laugh. Tears were spilling over her lashes now. He pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside sat a ring that looked like it had been forged from moonlight and shadow, The band was black titanium, matte and strong. In the center was a raw, unpolished moonstone that seemed to shift colors grey, blue, and a flash of violet. "It's an heirloom," Declan said quietly. "My grandmother's. She was the only Sterling who married for love, not politics. She told me to give it to the woman who could handle the storm." He dropped to one knee. The movement was fluid, a surrender of power that he offered only to her. "Vivian Moore," he said, looking up at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "No contracts, no timelines, no pretending. I am asking you to be my partner, my equal, and the love of my life. Will you marry me? For real this time?" Vivian dropped to her knees in front of him, disregarding the expensive Persian rug. She grabbed his face in her hands, pulling him toward her. "Yes," she sobbed. "Yes, you idiot. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. It was cold, then instantly warm, as if it recognized her. He kissed her then, and it wasn't the searing, possessive kiss of the ballroom. It was slow. It was tender. It tasted of salt tears and hot chocolate, and the promise of a future that they had fought tooth and nail to secure. 3 months later, on the vernal equinox, they were married. There was no grand cathedral. There were no press helicopters circling overhead. They chose a small, private vineyard in upstate New York that belonged to the pack, hidden deep in the rolling hills where the cell service was spotty and the air was clean. The guest list was small. Kyle stood as the best man, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo, but grinning every time he looked at Declan. The staff from the foundation were there. A few of the council members who had proven their loyalty attended, respectful and quiet. Vivian didn't wear a traditional ball gown. She wore a sleek, silk slip dress that moved like water, simple and elegant. She walked down the aisle alone, not because she had no one, but because she had saved herself, and she was walking to Declan of her own free will. Declan stood under the arbor of dormant vines, his hands clasped behind his back. When he saw her, his composure broke. Vivian saw the tears track down his face, unashamed. The ceremony was short. They wrote their own vows. "I promise," Vivian said, her voice clear in the crisp spring air, "to count the costs, but to never count the score. I promise to be your anchor when the wolf is too loud, and your silence when the world is too noisy. I used to think I needed to be someone else, to be loved, someone stronger, someone braver. You taught me that I was already enough." Declan took her hands. His voice was deep, resonating in the chests of everyone present. "I promise," he said, "to protect you, not as a possession, but as my heart living outside my chest. I promise to listen to you, even when you're wrong, which is rare. But it happens." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. "I spent my whole life building a fortress to keep people out. You walked right through the front door and redecorated. I am yours, Vivian, today, tomorrow, and every day after that, forever." When the officiant pronounced them mates and partners for life, the cheer that went up wasn't polite applause. It was a howl, a joyous, primal sound from the wolves present, joined by the cheers of the humans. The reception lasted until dawn. They danced under strings of Edison bulbs, drinking cheap wine and eating cake that was too sweet, as the sun began to crest over the hills, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. Declan found Vivian sitting on a stone wall at the edge of the property, looking out at the horizon. He took off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Regrets?" he asked, sitting beside her. "One," she said seriously. Declan stiffened. "What? I should have negotiated for more closet space in the penthouse before I said I do." Declan laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist, burying his face in the crook of her neck where her scent, vanilla and happiness, was strongest. "We can build a bigger closet," he murmured against her skin. "We can build whatever we want." Vivian leaned back against him, closing her eyes. She thought about the girl in the ballroom, shaking in her heels, whispering a desperate plea to a monster. She thought about the woman she was now safe, loved, and powerful in her own right. The monster had turned out to be a king, and the pretend had turned out to be the only real thing in her life. "Declan, do you remember what you said that night when you claimed me?" He kissed her temple. "I said a lot of things. You asked. Forever." Declan tightened his hold on her, watching the sun break fully over the horizon, bathing them in light. "I wasn't asking. Vivian," he whispered, the truth of it settling deep in her bones. "I was telling you, it was always going to be forever. And that, my friends, is the real ending of Vivian and Declan's story. It wasn't just about escaping a villain or winning a corporate war. It was about the bravery it takes to let down your walls and trust someone after you've been broken. I think the most powerful moment wasn't the fight in the warehouse, but the moment in the library where they tore up the contract. It showed that true love is a choice, not just a biological bond or a business deal. What did you think of their vows? And do you agree with Vivian that they needed to choose each other for it to be real? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like the video. It helps so much. Subscribe for more romances that bring the drama and the feels, and hit that bell icon so you're the first to know when the next episode drops. I've got a story coming next week about a runaway bride and a grumpy billionaire that you won't want to miss. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. And remember, sometimes, just pretend is just the beginning. See you next time.